Welcome to the Industrial Talk Podcast with Scott MacKenzie. Scott is a passionate industry professional dedicated to transferring cutting-edge, industry-focused innovations and trends while highlighting the men and women who keep the world moving. So put on your hard hat, grab your work boots, and let's go.
All right, once again, thank you very much for joining Industrial Talk. Thank you very much for your continued support of a platform that is dedicated to industrial professionals all around the world. Because you're bold, you're brave, you dare greatly, you innovate, you collaborate, you solve problems, you are making the world a better place each and every day, and that's why we celebrate you on Industrial Talk. And as you can tell, maybe there's some buzz in the background, we are at SMRP's 31st Annual Conference. It is the biggest one yet. And there's a lot of individuals around here that are focused on solving those challenges that you have in industry, and it's awesome. Awesome to see. A lot of technology, but we always talk about people because it always gets down to people. And because you want to be, and you're listening to this, you need to be involved in whatever reliability, maintenance, and asset management. Your first stop is smrp.org. smrp.org. They have everything you need to get going and keep the conversation rolling. And speaking of which, we have a gentleman by the name of Brian. Eruditio is the company, and let's get a crack, and we're going to be talking people. And among other things. Brian, you having a good day?
I'm having a great day. How are you?
Good. Good conference?
It's great.
Were you here last year?
I was not. So I've been with SMRP for years. I've been a CMRP since about 2018, but I've never been to the conference.
No kidding.
This is the first one.
No kidding. What's your first impression? That's pretty cool.
Oh, it's incredible. It's incredible. Lots of good information, lots of good technology boosts and everything else like that. And met a lot of interesting people today.
I like the fact that, okay, you have the vendors here. Yes, they are. They're right here. We're right in the middle of the floor, and it's an exciting place to be. But I enjoy the fact that there's just the participants. They're right in the trenches. They're trying to make sure their operations are running, without drama. And deploying all of the things that we, talk about here at SMRP. It's really nice to see it. And as I look out, that it's very collegial and everybody's talking and very smiling, but there's just this real desire to help. Yeah. So that's what I like. I love it. Yeah. Before we get into the conversation, give us a little background on who Brian is.
Well, being here is I'll say a bit of a miracle. Right. I started professionally in the Marines back in '97.
Oh, wow. Thank you for your service.
Full career there. I loved aircraft. I worked on F-18s. I met my wife there. She was an engine mechanic. I was an airframe mechanic. It was kind of a match made in heaven.
Wow, That's pretty cool.
So she was in the Navy. I was in the Marines, and we started our family back in 2000. But I got picked up for an officer program, so they sent me to Purdue. I got my aerospace engineering degree. So now I'm a pilot in high school. I've got aircraft maintenance experience. I'm an aerospace engineer. And then the Marine Corps' infinite wisdom, infantry. So for the next 10 years, I spent running around shooting things and blowing things up, which was incredible.
Yeah.
And what I'll tell you is that it was probably the most invaluable experience that I could have had, because I was very mathematical, very analytical, very data type centric. I was a very poor people person, and that quickly turned me into a very good people person, because those guys out there are some of the smartest people that I've ever worked with.
No kidding. That
kick in the doors and do these things. They're psychologically being able to look on the other side of a wall and be able to get inside of somebody's head and know exactly what they're going to do.
Oh, wow.
And know exactly what the guy on the left and right. So these guys are incredibly, incredibly smart with what they do with their craft. And so I'm very fortunate to have that experience. And then about 2014, it was time to go. So I retired. I went to Exxon for a little bit.
Yeah.
I spent some time as a maintenance manager. It wasn't the right fit for me for there. So I spent about 3.5 years. But that was where I was introduced to reliability, because we had a reliability person. We just didn't do really well with it.
No kidding, at Exxon?
Oh, it was horrible. It was take the youngest person out of college and say, hey, do this, do reliability. What's reliability? I don't know. Now, I can't say that's all of Exxon. That was our plant.
Right.
And so I started to realize that it's much bigger than what we're using it for. And I applied for a job at U.S. Steel in reliability, and I got it. And at that point, the plant manager just poured thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars into the four of us that were on the team. I got my CMRP, and then the light bulb came on. And I realized all of these principles in reliability are a mirror image of what I've done in the Marine Corps for the last 17 years. You want the gun to fire the first time. You want the machine to run when you turn it on. You want people to be trained when they kick in a door. You want people to be trained to follow the right process.
Yeah.
It's all the same. It's all the same. So I started to make those connections and launched forward very quickly into the reliability profession, and I've had so much fun ever since.
And I have to ask this, I'm not trying to be negative or anything, because you're wired that way, which is pretty cool. I like that, because it is a passion for education and continuous education. Don't mess, that's the reality, because the world of reliability, asset management, maintenance, and all things in between is constantly evolving and changing and moving, right?
Yeah.
Great. Very cool. But the reality is that there is some frustrations, and why, see, you get it, other people don't.
Right. Explain
that.
And when you mean frustrations, which ones do you mean?
Just the embracing just the right. In organizations, and it's always the people. It's never.
Yeah.
I can find a vibration, device, and I can stick it out there, and I can start pulling data, and I can do all of that. It's all there. It's all here. I can align a motor with. Yeah. There's laser alignment. I can do all that. The technologies, and it is superior.
But we haven't solved the problem yet. We've got all the technology, but we can't seem to get it to solve the problem still.
Why?
So that's a great question, and if you root cause it, right? Let's think back to why can't we apply it, and we look at our education level, right? And I don't mean education like college or beyond or anything like that. What I mean is in industry, how trained are we with what we do in industry?
Oh yeah.
And you say, well, we're not there. We don't have the training. It's hard to find good people these days, and that's a challenge for everybody, right? You can't find people who are trained, who have the skills. So back it up. If we go back far enough, what we find is that in about 1970, there was a dude named Milton Friedman.
Oh yeah,
know him.
Oh yeah.
So Milton Friedman, Google him, Friedman Doctrine. Before 1970, companies were focused on the customer and on the employee. And then Milton Friedman came to the scene and he said, you know what? No, companies should be focused on the shareholder. And CEOs everywhere, generally in publicly traded companies, turn their heads and they go, wait, what? We're focused the wrong direction? I had no idea.
Yeah.
And so they started focusing on the shareholder, and we started to get short-sighted because those shareholders want the return on their investment.
Oh, yeah.
And they want it in terms of dollars, right? So we started to think towards cutting training, cutting maintenance, cutting the things that we don't see as a profit center, we see them as a cost center. And then in about 1980, there was the FAA strike. And
remember it well.
Yep. So Reagan then set a precedent for layoffs as being a business tool rather than a full stop, we're about to go over the cliff tool. He laid off 80,000 employees and said, you'll never work in the FAA again. And now the CEOs are focused on shareholders, and they have a tool that now makes people a resource rather than
an asset.
A human, right? Rather than a human, an asset. Yeah. And so that was 1980, and now it is 2023. So 43 years later, we've forgotten where we came from. We don't even know what it's like to think of the customer as, being beholden to the customer and being beholden to the employees, except for some exceptions. You have privately owned companies, you have smaller ones that still have a longer vision, but for mostly the big and the publicly traded ones, we've lost that.
I'll give you an example. I was fortunate to be part of a team that took a company public. Great, cool. Before day one or prior to going public, we were just pinpoint focus on customers, pinpoint focus on solving their problems and solutions and doing what we need to do. And that was just part of it. But the strategy of going public was necessary to expand and grow and all of the stuff that is necessary for a business. When we finally, signed a deal and said now we're a public company, our focus instantaneously changed from customers to shareholder, because the shareholders had all the leverage,
Yes.
and they wanted us to expand and do whatever. And I want money from that type of stuff. That was like instant, and they always, I'm a shareholder, don't trust me, complained.
Yeah.
And so that squeaky wheel concept, it always happens.
Yeah.
So that's very interesting, and I like that.
Yes, I mean, we're surrounded by great, incredible technology, but we've all been trained that technology is the answer, and then our executives see technology as the answer and data as the answer, to where I can't even go talk to somebody and tell them what I do. I say, we do education first consulting. We train people how to change their organizations. Oh, you mean that's a CMMS integration? Oh, you mean the big data integration? No, we change people. Oh, it's just like the connection can't even be made almost today. It's hard to get there.
Do you think that people equation, everybody is struggling to find people? Mm-hmm. It's still a necessity.
Yes.
But I find that there's a disconnect between I need people, but I'm not willing to do what is necessary to train and retain as much as I possibly can. That's a change within my organization, which I'm not. That's sort of the rub. I need people, but I'm not willing to do what is necessary to get the people and retain the people and train the people, which makes complete and utter sense.
Yeah, totally. Right.
Yeah, and do you think a lot of that has? And so I'm left with, I need technologies because I need to get more out of my whatever technology because I can't find people.
Right. Yeah. So that is. I mean, it's like not understanding the root cause means that we're looking for a solution that might be a Band-Aid, and it might be a temporary Band-Aid, but it's not a solution. It's just temporarily putting a finger in the dam while 3 other cracks open up. Right?
Yeah.
So this is a huge gap, right? There's a huge gap, and the question is, how do we close it? Because you're not going to change the culture. You're certainly not going to change it overnight. If somebody else like Milton Friedman got up today and said, hey, we're wrong, we need to turn the other direction, it might take another 30 or 40 years to get there.
Yeah.
Right? But that's not going to happen today. So what do we do today?
What do we do today? How do we close that gap? Because it's the reality of it, and it just has to happen.
Right. And so for all the executives out there, you guys know what you can do if you understand this, even though most of us or most of them don't. So really, this is for the front line. This is for the maintenance managers. This is for the plant managers, right? First of all, is understanding where real value is created, right? OEE is a result. Profitability is a result. I can't touch profitability. I can't touch it with my hands.
Yeah.
Right? I can't even touch PM compliance with my hands. What I can do is I can touch a job plan. I can write a job plan. I can put a kit in a box. I can request work as I identify it. Right? I can do those types of things. I can do things with my human hands that create action, and those actions cascade into the results that we want.
Here's the challenge. If I was an executive and I'm willing to invest in educating, training, cultural, and effectively working on the culture of my organization, I'm all in. Mm-hmm. I guarantee you I'm thinking about, well, I'm going to invest all this time, energy, and effort, and they're going to leave.
Sure.
And I think it stems from the Milton Friedman example.
Right.
It's like they're not beholden to me. I'm not beholden to them. And because the market is the way the market is, I'm ready to bolt.
Yeah.
I've got more skills. I have more value. They're not going to pay me what I can go over here and get paid.
Yeah.
So how do we deal with that? Because it does happen.
Yeah. The first thing I would say is that right now, in the vacuum of no training, nobody focuses on people, the best way to get a raise or get promoted is to jump to a different company.
It is.
So you're saying to me, I don't want to train you because you might leave, but they're leaving because you're not training them, right? And what we've actually seen on the ground is the exact opposite of what's intuitive. If my company invests time and money into me, I really enjoy that. I really want to be effective. I want to have that impact out on the floor and know that my life is meaningful. And so I stay. right? So I stay because you trained me. I stay because you value me. And if I go somewhere else, they're not going to value me.
But the reality is, yes, and I agree with you 100%. And I think that that's really counterintuitive. And I think that we've sadly drank that Kool-Aid that, hey, if I can train them, they're going to go to some other place and somebody's going to say, hey, they've invested, it's cheaper for me, blah, blah, blah. But the reality is, as executives, the reason they move so much is because they're receiving their training on the job as an executive, and they're going to go to, and they're every bit as mobile as anybody else. 3 to 5 years max, and they're gone.
Yeah, that's the truth.
So it's really just an interesting, but what I hear, what I see in this conversation is one, it's definitely a people equation.
It is.
And how do you do that?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
There was one thing that I heard that totally flipped my mind, and it was about 2 years ago now. It was an interview. You remember the old TV show Hercules in the 90s?
Yeah.
Kevin Sorbo?
Yeah.
So him and his wife are still very active on the public scene. Sam Sorbo was on an interview. That's his wife's name, Sam Sorbo. She was on an interview on the Epic Times, and she made a statement that actually just blew my mind. And she said, wealth has nothing to do with money. She said, wealth is created through the transfer of knowledge.
Oh, I agree with that.
Yeah, and it took me a minute. And I was like, wait a minute. I understand, money and the economy, stuff moving, whatever, but she's 100% right. Wealth is created through the transfer of knowledge. That's why we pay so much to go to school. I need that knowledge because that is value that I can now inject back into society, right? And if I share something with my kids, morals with my kids, that is value that they will then inject back into society, right? And so if the company invests in me, that is value that I can now inject back into society. So is it totally perfect? As 100% you're going to stay? No, but you know what? You're still contributing to the industry.
Yeah, see, that's a great, that I like that a lot. It's not without value, right? Yeah. And if you have, from if I owned a business and if I had a humble heart and a desire to truly create a business that has resilience, there's no way I can do it being sort of old school in the way I look at the business. And I have to recognize that I have to change.
Yeah.
The culture has to change and be more in line with the way we look at the world today. And training has to be fundamental.
Yep. Absolutely.
And do that with a happy heart, not with a heart of I don't care, blah blah blah.
Yeah, for real.
So how do people get a hold of you, my friend?
So I'm at Eruditio. You can get to eruditio.com or I'm on LinkedIn. Look me up on LinkedIn.
Are you on LinkedIn? Pretty active?
Not so active, but I'll answer some messages.
You need to be active.
Yeah.
Thank you. I will definitely pull up your LinkedIn stat card and have it out on Industrial Talk, so that people will connect via LinkedIn for you.
All right. Thanks, Scott.
All right. We are broadcasting once again at SMRP 31st Annual Conference here in Orlando, the biggest ever right now. If you are in the world of asset management, or if you have a desire to be in asset management, maintenance, or reliability, go out. Your first stop would be smrp.org. Make that happen. Go out to smrp.org and get engaged. You will not be disappointed. You get to meet great people like Brian and others that are really passionate about, impacting the world in a positive way. We're going to wrap it up on the other side. Thank you very much again for joining. We will be right back. There you go, man.
You're listening to the Industrial Talk Podcast Network.
That's Brian. Eruditio is the company. The event was SMRP. And if you're in the world of asset management, maintenance, and reliability, that is the event for you. The next one is just right around the corner. So make sure that you put that on your calendar. It's in Orlando, and it's going to be a barn burner for sure. We were talking about people. We were talking about culture. And I don't care what type of technology you have. The technology is the technology. If you don't have the right training, people, culture, You're not going to get the most out of that solution or those solutions. So make sure that you make a note of that. All right. You have a podcast or thinking about a podcast, you need to talk to me. You need to put it out on Industrial Talk. If you have a technology or a solution, you need to talk to me. You need to highlight that solution or technology out on Industrial Talk. That's the go-to. All right. Be bold, be brave, dare greatly. Hang out with Brian. Change the world. We're going to have another great conversation shortly, so stay tuned.